The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across a kilometer of space, its crystalline walls housing representatives from over 300 advanced civilizations. At its center, Sarah Chen stood beside Earth's ambassador, her small frame barely visible among the towering alien forms. At 12 years old, she was the youngest human ever to enter these hallowed chambers. She was also, unknown to everyone present, about to change the course of human history. The human delegation will now present their petition for full membership, announced High Counselor Vexthor, his bioluminescent tentacles rippling with barely concealed disdain. The Mersian leader's 7 eyes fixed upon Sarah and Ambassador Collins with what could only be described as pity. Sarah's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady as she activated the holographic display. Honored members of the Assembly, I present Earth's achievements in quantum mechanics and space-time manipulation. A harsh laugh cut through the chamber. Quantum mechanics, the species that still uses chemical rockets to reach their own moon. The speaker, a crystalline being known as Archive Mind 7, shifted its faceted surface in what passed for amusement among its kind. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but kept her chin high. She had expected this reaction. It was, after all, why she was here. Perhaps, rumbled Vexthor, the humans would benefit from another century of observation status. Their civilization is young, barely able to grasp the fundamental principles of interstellar travel. They still think in linear dimensions, for void's sake. Ambassador Collins stepped forward, his diplomatic training evident in his measured response. With respect, High Counselor, humanity has made remarkable progress in the past decade alone. Our understanding, interrupted a Silex representative, its photonic matrix flaring bright with derision. Your species still debates the nature of gravity while the rest of us bend it to our will. You've barely scratched the surface of what constitutes real science. Sarah watched the faces around her. Some biological, some mechanical, some barely comprehensible to human perception. All of them looked down at Earth's representatives with the same expression. Contempt mixed with condescension. It was exactly what she had anticipated, what she had counted on. Because none of them knew about the workshop hidden beneath her grandfather's old quantum lab in Beijing. None of them had seen the equations that had kept her awake for the past 3 years, the calculations that had made her mathematics teachers quit in confusion. And none of them had any idea about what was taking shape in that workshop, piece by impossible piece. Perhaps, Sarah said quietly, her voice somehow carrying through the massive chamber, the Assembly would be interested in a practical demonstration of Earth's capabilities. The laughter that followed was immediate and thunderous. Several species that communicated through chemical signatures released what their kind considered hilarious pheromones. Even the usually stoic energy collective representatives pulsed with amused frequencies. A demonstration. Vexthor's tentacles writhed with mirth. Child, your species can barely achieve stable fusion. What could you possibly demonstrate that would interest this assembly? Sarah met his 7 eyes without flinching. I've built something. Something that works on principles your scientists haven't discovered yet. The laughter died down slightly, replaced by curious murmurs. Ambassador Collins shot her a warning look. This wasn't part of their scripted presentation. But Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. I call it the Star Killer, and if the Assembly is willing, I would like to show you what it can do in exactly 7 standard days. Archive Mind 7's crystalline surface rippled with interest. The human child claims to have built something beyond our understanding. This is unexpected entertainment. 7 days. Vexthor's tentacles curled with amusement. Very well, young human. The Assembly could use some light diversion. In 7 days, you may present this. Starkiller. Though I warn you, disappointing this body carries serious consequences for your species' petition. Sarah bowed slightly, hiding the smile that threatened to break across her face. Thank you, High Counselor. 7 days is all I need. As she and Ambassador Collins were escorted from the chamber, the sounds of renewed laughter followed them. The ambassador waited until they were alone in the transit pod before rounding on her. "Sarah, what were you thinking?" "We had a plan, a careful diplomatic approach. Now you've staked Earth's future on some project you've never even mentioned to the Council." Sarah looked up at him, her young face set with determination. "They were never going to take us seriously with presentations and petitions, sir. They needed to laugh at us. They needed to be absolutely certain of their superiority." "And why is that?" Collins asked, his anger giving way to confusion. "Because," Sarah said, pulling up a holographic display of her workshop, "that's going to make it so much more impressive when we prove them wrong." The display showed something that made Collins's breath catch in his throat. There, taking shape in the hidden workshop, was a ship unlike anything humanity had ever built. Its hull seemed to bend light itself, its form somehow existing in more dimensions than the human mind could properly process. Is that real?" Collins whispered. Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with the light of victory. "Oh, it's real. And in 7 days, it's going to show the Assembly exactly what humans are capable of when everyone tells us something is impossible." As their pod streaked back toward Earth, Sarah began running calculations in her head. 7 days to finish the impossible. 7 days to change everything. 7 days to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. She smiled. 7 days was more than enough. Deep beneath the streets of Beijing, Sarah Chen's workshop hummed with energy. The vast underground chamber, originally her grandfather's quantum research facility, now housed something that defied conventional physics. Holographic displays filled the air with cascading equations, while in the center, the partially completed star color pulsed with an otherworldly glow. "You're sure about this calculation?" Dr. Marcus Way asked, his weathered face illuminated by the ethereal light of the ship. As Sarah's mentor and one of the few people who knew about her project, he had watched her work evolve from theoretical impossibility to tangible reality. Sarah nodded, her fingers dancing through the holographic numbers floating around her. The aliens think in linear terms, even with their advanced technology. They've mastered the physics they know, but they've never questioned whether there could be something more fundamental beneath it all. She pulled up a new set of equations, these ones seemingly written in multiple dimensions at once. See, they manipulate space-time like it's clay, bending it, warping it, but they've never thought to ask why it behaves that way in the first place. Marcus studied the equations, his eyes widening. Sarah, this isn't just new physics. This is something else entirely. I call it subspace mathematics," Sarah said, her voice quiet but intense. "I started seeing the patterns 3 years ago, in my dreams at first. Everyone kept telling me I was trying to solve impossible problems, that my approaches violated known physical laws. But that's just it. They're not laws at all. They're more like—" She paused, searching for the right words, like guidelines that reality usually follows. The star color's hull seemed to shift and flow, its surface somehow existing in more dimensions than the human eye could process. It wasn't just advanced technology. It was technology that rewrote the rules of what was possible. "The alien ships work with reality," Sarah continued, running her hand along the impossible surface of the star color. "This ship works underneath it." A soft chime interrupted them. Another simulation complete. Sarah rushed to the display, her eyes scanning the results. A smile spread across her face. "It works. The quantum field manipulator is stable." Marcus moved to look at the results, his scientific skepticism warring with what he was seeing. "But this would mean—" "Sarah, this would mean the ship cold exist in multiple states simultaneously," Sarah finished. "Not just traveling through space, but traveling through possibilities. The aliens think faster than light travel is the pinnacle of achievement. They never considered that you could simply choose to be somewhere else." She walked around the ship, checking various instruments and readings. Their ships fight against physics. The star color doesn't fight at all. It simply suggests to reality that it might be more convenient if it were somewhere else, And reality agrees. Marcus shook his head in wonder. They'll never believe it. The assembly will think it's a trick. Good, Sarah said, her young face set with determination. Let them think that. Let them laugh, because when they see what this ship can really do. She trailed off as new alerts flashed across her displays. Problems? Marcus asked, noting her sudden focus. No, Sarah replied, her fingers flying over the controls. Opportunities. The power core is adapting faster than I predicted. It's learning. The core of the Starkiller pulsed with a deep, resonant energy. Unlike the harsh, controlled power sources of alien ships, this was something organic, almost alive. Sarah had designed it to evolve, to grow, to find new solutions to impossible problems. You've created more than a ship, Marcus said quietly. You've created a new form of life. Sarah nodded, watching as the ship's systems continued to evolve and adapt. Humanity has always been good at that, seeing the life in things, finding connections where others see only mechanics. The aliens think their technology is superior because it's predictable, controllable. They don't understand that true advancement comes from letting go of control, from letting systems grow and evolve naturally. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the workshop as another system came online. The Starkiller's hull briefly phased through several quantum states at once, existing in multiple realities before settling back into this one. 5 days, Sarah said, checking her countdown display. 5 days until we show the assembly what happens when you tell humanity something is impossible. She turned to Marcus, her eyes shining with the reflection of the ship's quantum field. They think we're primitive because we still ask questions they decided were answered centuries ago. They don't realize that's our greatest strength. Marcus watched as Sarah returned to her work, her young mind grappling with concepts that the greatest alien scientists had never even imagined. The Starkiller continued its quiet evolution, each moment bringing it closer to completion, closer to changing humanity's place in the galaxy forever. In 5 days, the assembly would learn what happened when you underestimated human ingenuity. In 5 days, they would learn that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from building better tools, but from questioning why the tools work at all. And in 5 days, a 12-year-old girl would show the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy that they had only scratched the surface of what was possible. The night before the first test, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stood in her workshop, surrounded by holographic readouts and status reports, watching the Starkiller pulse with quantum energy. The ship was complete, at least as complete as something that existed in multiple quantum states could ever be. Final diagnostics are green, announced Dr. Wei, his voice echoing through the vast underground chamber. Though I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure what we're measuring anymore. Sarah smiled, running her hand along the ship's impossible surface. The hull seemed to respond to her touch, rippling with patterns that existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. It knows we're ready. It wants to fly. The small team of scientists and engineers who had been sworn to secrecy gathered around the main control center. They had spent the last 3 days running simulations, but everyone knew that with technology this revolutionary, simulations could only tell them so much. Remember, Sarah addressed the team, her young voice carrying the weight of authority earned through brilliant innovation. The Starkiller doesn't just move through space, it moves through possibility. When we activate the quantum drive, we're not pushing against reality. We're asking it to reconsider its options. One of the engineers, Dr. Patel, shook her head in amazement. I still can't believe we built this. The assembly's ships rely on brute force, pushing through space-time with massive energy expenditure. This is like teaching physics to dance. That's exactly it, Sarah said, climbing into the pilot's chair. The control interface wasn't like anything seen in human or alien ships. Instead of traditional controls, it responded to intention and possibility. The aliens think they're advanced because they can force reality to bend. We're advanced because we've learned to ask nicely. The countdown began. Through the massive underground launch doors, a strip of star-filled sky became visible. Sarah's hands hovered over the quantum interface, her mind already connecting with the ship's evolving consciousness. "Quantum core stable," reported Dr. Wei. "Reality matrix holding at 99.9% coherence." "Sarah, it's time." Sarah took a deep breath, initiating first test flight of the Starkiller. "Let's show them what impossible looks like." She engaged the quantum drive. There was no roar of engines, no violent thrust pushing them back in their seats. Instead, the world around them seemed to soften, as if reality itself was becoming more flexible, more open to suggestion. The Starkiller rose from its cradle, but it didn't so much fly as elegantly step through the space between spaces. As it ascended through the launch tunnel, the air around it rippled with quantum possibilities. "All systems nominal," Dr. Wei announced, though his voice held a note of awe. "We're approaching the upper atmosphere. I think the spatial sensors are having trouble deciding exactly where we are." Sarah nodded, feeling the ship's consciousness merge with her own. "That's because we're not just in one place. We're in all the places we might be, until we decide which one we prefer." The Starkiller emerged into space, its hull reflecting starlight in ways that made the human mind struggle to comprehend. To any observers, it would have appeared to flicker in and out of existence, as if reality itself couldn't quite agree on where it should be. "Setting course for lunar orbit," Sarah said, though course wasn't quite the right word for what the Starkiller did. The ship didn't move through space in any conventional sense. Instead, it gracefully rearranged probability until it was simply more convenient for it to be near the moon. The journey that should have taken days took less than a heartbeat. One moment they were above Earth, the next they were dancing through lunar orbit. But they hadn't so much traveled the distance as suggested that the distance needn't exist at all. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Patel, staring at the readings. "We're not just faster than light. We're faster than physics itself." Sarah's fingers danced across the quantum interface. "Let's try something more ambitious." Everyone ready for a little trip to Alpha Centauri. Before anyone could respond, the Starkiller shifted again. The familiar light of Earth's sun was replaced by the binary glow of humanity's nearest stellar neighbors. A journey that would take alien ships weeks, even with their advanced drives, had taken them seconds. 3 light years in the blink of an eye, Dr. Wei said, checking and rechecking his instruments. "Sarah, do you realize what you've done? You haven't just built a better ship. You've fundamentally changed our understanding of what's possible." Sarah watched the double suns of Alpha Centauri paint patterns of light across the Starkiller's quantum hull. "No," she said quietly. "I just remembered something humanity seems to have forgotten. The universe isn't a machine that we have to force to work our way. It's a conversation, and sometimes all you have to do is ask the right questions." She turned the ship back toward Earth, feeling its joyous response to her intentions. In 2 days, they would show the assembly what humanity had created. In 2 days, they would learn that sometimes the greatest technological advances don't come from building bigger engines or stronger weapons, but from looking at the universe with the wonder and curiosity of a child. As they slipped back through the quantum possibilities toward Earth, Sarah smiled. The assembly had called humanity primitive because they still asked questions. They were about to learn that questions were the most powerful force in the universe. The assembly's emergency session was called less than an hour after their long-range sensors detected the impossible. High Counselor Vexthor's tentacles writhed with agitation as he addressed the gathered representatives, their faces showing varying degrees of disbelief and concern. "The data cannot be correct," he insisted, his 7 eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the Starkiller's quantum signature. "No species, especially not humans, could have developed this technology. Our sensors must be malfunctioning." Archive Mind 7's crystalline surface rippled with unusual patterns. "The sensors are functioning perfectly, High Counselor. We have confirmed the readings with 17 different detection methods. The human vessel doesn't just exist. It exists in ways our science previously considered impossible." The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives from hundreds of species tried to speak at once. Some demanded immediate military action, others called for scientific investigation, and a few suggested that perhaps they had severely underestimated humanity. In her workshop beneath Beijing, Sarah watched the diplomatic channels light up with urgent messages. The assembly's reaction was exactly what she had predicted: denial, followed by fear, followed by the inevitable show of force. "They're mobilizing their fleet," Dr. Wei reported, monitoring the quantum detection array. "At least 30 capital ships, including the Mersian dreadnought Immutable Law." Sarah nodded, making final adjustments to the Starcolor's quantum core. "Good. Let them come. They need to see this up close." Ambassador Collins burst into the workshop, his usually composed demeanor shaken. "Sarah, the Assembly has issued an ultimatum. They're demanding we surrender the Starcolor for immediate inspection and dismantling. They're calling it a threat to galactic stability." "Of course they are," Sarah replied calmly, not looking up from her work. "Their entire civilization is built on the assumption that they understand how the universe works. We just proved them wrong, and that terrifies them." The ambassador's face paled. "They're not just afraid, Sarah. They're angry. The Mersian fleet alone could reduce Earth to ash. We need to consider our options carefully." Sarah finally turned to face him, her young face set with determination. "With respect, Ambassador, we don't need to consider anything. The Assembly thinks they're coming to confiscate a dangerous weapon. They don't understand that the Starcolor isn't a weapon at all. It's a conversation with reality itself." She gestured to the ship, its hull shifting through quantum states like a dream made real. "They see technology as a way to force the universe to obey them. We've discovered something different. The universe is willing to cooperate if you just learn how to ask properly." Alerts flashed across the quantum sensors as the Assembly fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 30 ships, each one representing the pinnacle of conventional space technology, arranged themselves in an attack formation that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "Final warning from the Assembly," Dr. Wei announced, reading from the diplomatic channel. "They're demanding our immediate surrender and," he paused, his eyes widening, "and the execution of the dangerous elements responsible for creating this technology." Sarah stood up, straightening her simple jacket. "Well then, I suppose it's time for my parent-teacher conference." The joke, delivered with perfect deadpan, broke some of the tension in the room. "You can't be serious," Collins protested. "They'll destroy you." "No," Sarah said, walking toward the Starcolor's quantum interface. "They'll try to destroy me. But to destroy something, you have to be able to find it first. And finding something that exists in all possible states at once." She smiled. "That's considerably more difficult than they imagine." The ship's consciousness reached out to her as she settled into the pilot's chair. Around her, the small crew that had helped build the impossible took their stations. They weren't military personnel or hardened warriors. They were scientists, dreamers, people who had dared to ask questions that the Assembly had declared answered centuries ago. "The fleet is advancing," Dr. Wei reported. "They'll be in weapons range in 10 minutes. Sarah's fingers danced across the quantum interface, and the Starcolor hummed with possibility. 10 minutes is an eternity when you can step sideways through reality. Let's show them what happens when you tell humanity something is impossible." The ship rose from its cradle one final time, its hull shimmering with quantum potential. Above them, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy prepared to erase what they saw as a threat to their understanding of the universe. They were about to learn that understanding the universe wasn't about power or control. It was about wonder, curiosity, and the simple joy of asking, "What if?" As the Starcolor ascended toward its confrontation with the Assembly fleet, Sarah thought about all the times humans had been told they were too primitive, too simple, too young to grasp the complexities of the universe. She thought about every scientist who had been laughed at for asking questions that seemed naive. The Assembly was about to learn that sometimes the most profound discoveries come from the simplest questions, and sometimes Those questions come from a 12-year-old girl who didn't know that what she was doing was impossible. The assembly fleet hung in space like a wall of judgment, 30 ships representing the most advanced technology in known space. Their weapons were primed, their shields at maximum power, ready to eliminate what they saw as an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. The Starkiller emerged from Earth's atmosphere alone, a single ship piloted by a 12-year-old girl, facing down the combined might of civilizations that had mastered the stars before humans had invented the wheel. Final warning, human vessel. High Counselor Vexthor's voice echoed through the command channel. Power down your quantum systems and prepare to be boarded. This technology is too dangerous to remain in primitive hands. Sarah's response was calm, almost amused. With respect, High Counselor, I don't think you understand what you're looking at. The Starkiller isn't dangerous. It's curious. Curious. The Mersian leader's voice dripped with condescension. Child, you have created something that violates the fundamental laws of physics. The universe has rules. No, Sarah interrupted, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. The universe has habits. We just taught it some new ones. Before anyone could respond, the Starkiller flickered, not moving through space, but rather suggesting to reality that it might be more interesting if it were somewhere else. One moment it was facing the assembly fleet, the next it was behind them, then above them, then seemingly in multiple places at once. Impossible, shouted one of the alien commanders. All ships, open fire. Energy beams and quantum torpedoes lashed out, enough firepower to reduce a planet to ash. But hitting the Starkiller was like trying to strike a dream. The ship didn't dodge or evade. It simply chose to be where the attacks weren't, as if gently declining their invitation to be destroyed. You still don't understand. Sarah's voice was patient, like a teacher explaining a simple concept. You're trying to solve this with force. That's not how the Starkiller works. Here, let me show you something. The ship's quantum field expanded, enveloping the nearest assembly vessel. For a moment, that ship's crew experienced something unprecedented. They felt the universe as Sarah's technology perceived it, not as a set of rules to be forced into compliance, but as an infinite conversation of possibilities. By all the stars, whispered the alien captain. It's beautiful. One by one, Sarah extended the quantum field to each ship in the fleet. She wasn't attacking or defending. She was sharing, teaching, showing them a new way of seeing reality itself. This is what humanity offers the galaxy, Sarah explained as the assembly fleet hung suspended in quantum possibility. Not better weapons or stronger shields, but new questions, new ways of thinking. You've mastered the physics you know, but we've discovered physics you never imagined existed. High Counselor Vexthor's ship was the last to be embraced by the quantum field. His tentacles trembled as he experienced, for the first time in his long life, the sensation of reality as a willing partner rather than a force to be conquered. How? He managed to ask. How did your species discover this? Because we're young, Sarah replied simply. Because we still ask questions that you decided were settled long ago. Because sometimes it takes a child's perspective to see past the assumptions that limit us. She brought the Starkiller to a gentle stop in the center of the fleet. You called us primitive because we hadn't mastered your technology. But we didn't need to. We found something different, something that works with the universe instead of trying to dominate it. The quantum field retracted, leaving the assembly fleet floating in space, their weapons powered down, their crews forever changed by what they had experienced. Sarah opened a channel to all ships. The Starkiller isn't a weapon or a threat. It's an invitation to remember what it feels like to look at the universe with wonder instead of certainty, to ask questions instead of assuming we have all the answers. High Counselor Vexthor was quiet for a long moment before speaking. I believe, he said slowly, that the Assembly may need to reconsider its definition of advanced civilization. Sarah smiled. That's the most advanced thing you've said all day, High Counselor. In the days that followed, Earth's status in the galactic community underwent a radical change. The Assembly didn't just grant full membership, they established a new division dedicated to studying humanity's unique approach to physics and reality. The Starkiller became not a weapon of war, but a symbol of a new age in galactic science, where the combined knowledge of centuries-old civilizations was enriched by the fresh perspective of humanity's endless curiosity. And Sarah Chen, the 12-year-old who had changed the galaxy's understanding of what was possible, went back to her workshop. There were, after all, so many more questions to ask, so many more impossible things to discover. Because that was humanity's true gift to the galaxy, not the power to bend reality, but the wisdom to know that sometimes reality would rather dance.
The silence that shook the galaxy, the transmission, ended with static. 8 million voices silenced in an instant. Director Elena Vasquez stared at the empty screen where Kepler Station had been broadcasting just moments before. The research colony had been humanity's crown jewel, a peaceful settlement dedicated to advancing medical technology that had saved countless lives across dozens of species. Now it was nothing but superheated plasma and debris. High Chancellor Krex of the Zephyrian Dominion had made his point clear. The massive reptilian leader had announced the strike himself, his scaled features cold and calculating as he delivered. His ultimatum to the galaxy: humanity had been warned about establishing colonies in disputed sectors. They had chosen to ignore Zephyrian territorial claims. The consequences were absolute. Elena's hands trembled as she processed the magnitude of the loss. Kepler Station wasn't just a colony. It housed the galaxy's most advanced medical research facilities, schools for children from 17 different species, and cultural exchange centers that had fostered peace between dozens of civilizations. The Zephyrians had just murdered 8 million innocent beings to make a political statement. Within hours, the galactic community's response began flooding in. The ethereal collective sent formal condolences expressing deep regret for this unfortunate incident. The Merchant Guild imposed trade restrictions that would barely impact Zephyrian commerce. The Peaceful Union organized prayer ceremonies. Across their worlds, Ambassador Thylos of the Crystalline Courts delivered the most substantial response, calling for an emergency session of the Galactic Council to discuss appropriate measures. Elena watched these hollow gestures with growing fury. Appropriate measures, deep regret, unfortunate incident. 8 million people had been vaporized, and the galaxy's response was bureaucratic hand-wringing and meaningless ceremonies. The Zephyrians had calculated correctly. No one would risk real confrontation with their military might over one human colony. Captain Marcus Chen burst into Elena's office without ceremony. His usually perfect uniform was disheveled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Marcus commanded the Human Defense Fleet's Rapid Response Division, and Elena had never seen him look so shaken. Director, we're receiving confirmation from 17 sectors. Every human outpost, colony, and research station is reporting the same thing. Complete communications blackout from Kepler. No survivors detected. No escape pods. Nothing. Elena nodded grimly. She had expected as much. The Zephyrians didn't leave survivors when they wanted to send messages. What's the status of our fleet response? Marcus hesitated, his jaw clenching. That's what I need to discuss with you. Admiral Torres has issued classified orders to all human vessels. We're not retaliating. What do you mean we're not retaliating? Elena's voice rose sharply. All human ships are being recalled to Sol System immediately. Every colony is being evacuated under emergency protocols. All trade agreements are being suspended. All diplomatic missions are being terminated. We're pulling back from everything. Elena stared at him in disbelief. That's surrender. That's exactly what Krex wants. He destroys one of our worlds, and we abandon all of them. I don't understand it either, Marcus admitted. But the orders come directly from Earth Command. Priority Alpha classification. Every human in the galaxy is being brought home. The evacuation began within hours. Human vessels materialized at every colony, station, and outpost simultaneously. Families were given minutes to pack essential belongings. Research projects spanning decades were abandoned. Trade agreements worth trillions of credits were dissolved without explanation. The entire human presence in the galaxy simply started vanishing. Ambassador Thylos watched the exodus with growing unease. The crystalline being had worked with humans for over 30 years, establishing trade routes and cultural exchanges that had enriched both their civilizations. He had never seen anything like this systematic withdrawal. It doesn't fit their nature, he confided to his aide during a private communication. Humans respond to aggression with defiance. They negotiate. Through strength, this silent retreat is completely unprecedented. Other species began reporting similar observations. The Andromedan Collective noted that human merchants who had operated in their space for generations simply failed to appear at scheduled trade meetings. The Void Runners, a nomadic species that relied on human-manufactured medical supplies, found their orders cancelled without explanation. Even the Zephyrians noticed the sudden absence of human diplomatic protests and media outcry. High Chancellor Krex initially celebrated the human withdrawal as proof of his dominion's superiority. One demonstration of real power, and the mammals scurry back to their hole, he declared to his war council. Perhaps now they'll remember their place in the galactic order. But as days turned to weeks, even Krex began to feel unsettled by the completeness of humanity's disappearance. His intelligence networks reported the same impossible information from every sector. There were no humans to monitor. They had vanished as thoroughly as if they had never existed. The first signs that something was wrong came from the outer rim. Territories. A Zephyrian patrol reported finding an abandoned human research station in the Veil Nebula completely stripped of all equipment and personnel. The station's reactor had been cleanly shut down, its computers wiped, its supplies removed. It was as if the humans had simply evaporated. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human colonies that had existed for decades were found empty but undamaged. Mining operations that had run for generations sat silent with all equipment removed. Even small trading posts in remote sectors had been evacuated so thoroughly that no trace of human presence remained. Dr. Zephyr of the Ethereal Collective's Xenology Department published a disturbing analysis 3 weeks after Kepler Station's destruction. The systematic nature of this withdrawal suggests long-term preparation. You cannot relocate entire populations and industrial bases overnight without extensive planning. The humans were ready for this. Ambassador Thylos found this conclusion deeply troubling. He had worked closely with human administrators for decades and knew their decision-making processes. They were careful planners, but they also valued their galactic relationships too highly to abandon them lightly. This complete withdrawal suggested something far more significant than a tactical retreat. Meanwhile, strange phenomena began occurring. Throughout inhabited space, the Merchant Guild reported missing cargo vessels in sectors previously secured by human patrol fleets. The Andromedan Collective lost contact with 3 scientific expeditions investigating abandoned human research sites. Most disturbing of all, the Peaceful Union detected massive energy signatures in deep space between star systems, areas that should have been empty. High Chancellor, Krex dismissed these reports as coincidence and natural cosmic phenomena. His military advisors weren't as confident. General Vash, his most experienced commander, requested additional intelligence resources to investigate the human withdrawal. "Something about this doesn't feel right," Vash reported during a closed-door briefing. "Species don't just disappear. They're planning something." "Planning what?" Krex demanded. "They lost 8 million people and ran away with their tails between their legs. What could they possibly be planning that we should fear?" General Vash pulled up holographic displays showing troop movements and resource allocations across space. "Sir, we've had to redeploy significant forces to patrol sectors previously monitored by human fleets. Our intelligence networks in 17 systems have gone dark because they relied on human commercial vessels for communication. Our entire defensive strategy was built around the assumption that humans would continue maintaining their presence in buffer zones between us and hostile neighbors." For the first time since Kepler Station's destruction, Krex felt a flicker of uncertainty. The human withdrawal wasn't just removing a rival. It was creating a strategic vacuum that his own forces were struggling to fill. The truth was far more terrifying than any of the alien species suspected. Deep in the space between stars, humanity was preparing for something that had never been attempted in galactic history. Admiral Sarah Torres stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, flagship of a fleet that officially didn't exist. Around her 3,000 human vessels waited in perfect silence, their crews drawn from every colony, every station, every world that humanity had ever called home. The evacuation had been a cover story. For 18 months, human engineers had been secretly constructing the largest fleet in galactic history using resources supposedly allocated to peaceful colonies. Every research station had been a disguised shipyard. Every mining operation had been feeding materials into a military machine that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Asterisk. Dr. James Park approached the Admiral with a tablet displaying final system diagnostics. "All weapons systems are operational. The quantum disruption network is ready for deployment. We can target every major Zephyrian installation simultaneously, Admiral." Torres nodded grimly. The quantum disruption technology was humanity's gift to the galaxy, something no other species had even theorized. It would allow them to strike across impossible distances with perfect coordination. The Zephyrians had taught them that the galaxy respected only strength. Humanity was about to demonstrate strength beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. "Signal. All fleet commanders," Torres ordered. "Operation Starfall begins in 72 hours. The galaxy wanted to see what happens when you push humanity too far. They're about to learn." In the darkness between stars, humanity prepared to emerge from silence. The storm was coming, and it would reshape the balance of power forever. Asterisk. The storm unleashed. The first strike came without warning. High Chancellor Krex was reviewing intelligence reports in his private chamber when the fortress shields around Zephyr Prime simply ceased to exist. One moment, the capital world was protected by energy barriers that had never been breached in 5,000 years of warfare. The next moment, human warships materialized in the planet's upper atmosphere as if they had always been there. General Vash burst into Krex's chamber, his scaled features pale with shock. "Sir, we're under attack. 17 systems simultaneously. They came out of nowhere. Our defenses aren't responding." Krex's blood ran cold as he processed the impossibility of what he was hearing. 17 systems. That's impossible. No fleet can coordinate attacks across that distance. The communication delays alone would make it. His words were cut off as the palace trembled. Through his reinforced windows, Krex could see human vessels, hanging in the sky like dark angels of judgment. They weren't firing yet, but their presence alone was more terrifying than any bombardment. These weren't the patrol ships and research vessels he had grown accustomed to seeing. These were warships built for one purpose: absolute destruction. Admiral Sarah Torres broadcast simultaneously to every Zephyrian military installation in the galaxy. Her image appeared on command screens from the capital world to the furthest military outpost, her voice calm and utterly certain. "I am Admiral Sarah Torres of the Human Liberation Fleet. 18 months ago, your species murdered 8 million innocent people to demonstrate your power. Today, we demonstrate ours." The quantum disruption network activated across dozens of star systems simultaneously. Human fleets that had been hiding in the void between stars materialized at every major Zephyrian installation at exactly the same moment. The coordination was perfect, impossible, and absolutely devastating to Zephyrian morale. Dr. James Park monitored the operation from the Eclipse's tactical center. The quantum disruption technology had exceeded even his most optimistic projections. They were maintaining perfect real-time coordination across distances that should have required hours for communications to traverse. The Zephyrians were facing something that violated their understanding of physics. "Phase 1 complete," Park reported to Admiral Torres. "All primary targets are secured. Zephyrian military response is minimal. They can't coordinate counterattacks when they don't understand how we're doing this." Torres nodded, but her expression remained grim. "Begin Phase 2. Selective strikes on military infrastructure. Civilian populations are not to be harmed. We're not the Zephyrians." What followed was a masterclass in precision warfare. Human forces struck Zephyrian military bases with surgical accuracy, disabling defensive systems while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. Shipyards that had built the vessels that destroyed Kepler Station were reduced to scrap metal. Command centers that had coordinated the attack were left as smoking ruins. But hospitals, schools, and residential areas remained untouched. Ambassador Thylos watched the attacks unfold from his diplomatic vessel in neutral space, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep disturbance. He had requested an emergency session of the Galactic Council, but events were moving too quickly for diplomatic solutions. "The humans aren't just winning," he reported to the Council Assembly. "They're demonstrating capabilities that none of our species possess. This quantum coordination technology suggests scientific advances far beyond what we believed possible." The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field generator, pulsed with agitation. "How long have they been preparing this? The level of coordination required suggests decades of secret development." "Longer than that," Thylos replied, studying tactical analyses from his military advisors. "They've been building this capacity since first contact. Every peaceful research station, every trading post, every cultural exchange program was part of a larger infrastructure. They've been preparing for this possibility from the beginning." High Chancellor Krex's empire crumbled in hours rather than days. As news of simultaneous defeat spread through Zephyrian space, entire sectors began surrendering without resistance. The psychological impact of facing an enemy that could strike anywhere instantly was devastating to morale. General Vash coordinated the retreat from the capital as human forces secured orbital positions around Zephyr Prime. "Sir, we need to evacuate. You to the secondary command center in the outer reach. If we can regroup our forces with what forces?" Krex interrupted bitterly. They've struck 73 installations simultaneously. Our fleets are scattered or destroyed. Our command structure is gone. How do you fight an enemy that can be everywhere at once? The answer came in the form of another broadcast from Admiral Torres. This time, her message was directed not just at the Zephyrians, but at every species in the galaxy. To the civilizations of the galactic community, Torres began, her image broadcasting from every human ship simultaneously. For generations, humanity has sought peaceful coexistence with our neighbors. We have shared our medical advances, our cultural achievements, and our scientific discoveries freely. In return, we asked only for the right to exist among you as equals. The Admiral paused, her expression hardening. The Zephyrian Dominion chose to answer peaceful coexistence with mass murder. 8 million innocent lives were ended to demonstrate their power over us. Today, we demonstrate that such power is an illusion. Tactical displays throughout the galaxy showed the scope of humanity's response. Zephyrian military capacity had been reduced by 70% in a single coordinated strike. Their ability to project force beyond their own borders had been completely eliminated. We did not seek this war, Torres continued, but we will finish it. The Zephyrian Dominion's capacity for aggression has been permanently neutralized. Their military infrastructure has been dismantled. Their ability to threaten peaceful species has been removed. Dr. Park monitored reactions from across the galaxy as the broadcast continued. Intelligence networks were in chaos as species attempted to analyze what they had witnessed. The implications were staggering. If humans could coordinate attacks across such distances instantly, traditional concepts of space warfare had become obsolete. However, Torres said, her voice taking on a more conciliatory tone, humanity does not seek conquest. We seek justice and security for all peaceful species. To those civilizations who have shown friendship to humanity, our relationship remains unchanged. To those who choose the path of aggression, consider this demonstration carefully. High Chancellor. Krex watched the broadcast from his emergency bunker deep beneath the capital city. Around him, his remaining military commanders waited for orders that he no longer had the resources to give. The humans had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had eliminated a major military power without massive civilian casualties or territorial occupation. What do they want? General Vash asked quietly. If they wanted conquest, they could take our worlds. If they wanted revenge, they could have targeted civilian populations. What are they trying to achieve? The answer came as Admiral Torres concluded her broadcast. The Galactic Council will convene in 30 days to establish new protocols for interspecies relations. Humanity will participate as a founding member of a reformed council with authority to prevent future acts of aggression against peaceful species. The age of might makes right is ending. The age of justice begins now. Ambassador Thylos felt his crystalline matrix resonate with something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope mixed with terror. The humans had just proposed a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization. They weren't seeking to rule through force, but they were making it clear that they had the power to enforce their vision of justice. The response from other species was swift and revealing. The ethereal collective immediately announced support for humanity's proposal. The Merchant Guild, recognizing the economic implications of stable interspecies relations, endorsed the Reformed Council. Even species that had remained neutral for millennia began expressing interest in participating in humanity's new galactic order. Dr. Park presented his final analysis to Admiral Torres as human forces consolidated their positions throughout former Zephyrian space. The quantum disruption network has exceeded all projections. We can maintain real-time coordination across the entire galaxy. No hostile force can mass for aggression without our knowledge, and no peaceful species need fear surprise attacks. Torres nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. The real test isn't military, James. It's whether we can build something better than what came before. Power without wisdom is just tyranny with better weapons. The transformation that followed reshaped galactic civilization. Humanity didn't occupy Zephyrian worlds, but they established monitoring stations that made future aggression impossible. The reformed Galactic Council received unprecedented authority to investigate potential threats and coordinate peaceful responses. Species that had lived in fear of their aggressive neighbors for millennia began exploring new possibilities for cooperation and development. High Chancellor Krex found himself under house arrest on his own world. His empire reduced to a closely monitored collection of demilitarized planets. But rather than execution or exile, he faced something more challenging: accountability. Human administrators worked with Zephyrian civilians to establish new democratic institutions and repair the damage caused by generations of militaristic rule. The memorial for Kepler Station was built not as a monument to human suffering, but as a symbol of the price of aggression and the possibility of justice. Representatives from every galactic species contributed to its construction, and 8 million names were inscribed in the languages of all the victims' peoples. Admiral Torres stood before the completed memorial 6 months after Operation Starfall, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. The ceremony wasn't about human victory, but about collective commitment to preventing future tragedies. The 8 million who died at Kepler Station didn't die in vain if their sacrifice leads to a galaxy where such violence becomes impossible, Torres said in her dedication speech. Today, we commit not just to remembering them, but to ensuring that their children, and the children of every species, can build futures free from the fear of annihilation. Ambassador Thylos approached Torres after the ceremony, his crystalline form pulsing with patterns of deep respect. Your species has accomplished something remarkable, Admiral. You've demonstrated that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to use it. Torres smiled sadly. We learned that lesson at a terrible price. 8 million lives taught us that some powers are too dangerous to be left unchecked. Now it's our responsibility to make sure that lesson isn't forgotten. The galaxy had indeed learned. In the months and years that followed, the threat of human intervention prevented dozens of potential conflicts. The quantum disruption network became the foundation for a galactic early warning system that made surprise attacks impossible. Species that had spent millennia locked in cycles of revenge and retaliation began working together on projects that had once seemed impossibly ambitious. But humanity never forgot the price of peace. Every human ship carried a memorial plaque listing the names of Kepler Station's victims. Every human colony included a peace garden dedicated to their memory. The silent rage that had built humanity's greatest fleet was transformed into vigilant determination to protect all peaceful species. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their capacity to transform tragedy into justice, and their willingness to use overwhelming power in service of lasting peace. The storm had passed, but its lessons echoed through the stars, reminding every species that some prices are too high to pay, and some powers too dangerous to challenge. In the end, the Zephyrians had succeeded in teaching humanity their place in the galactic order, but that place wasn't as subjects or equals. It was as guardians of a peace they had paid for with 8 million lives, and protectors of a justice they would never allow to be forgotten. Asterisk.